Time to call the meeting to order. Our first item is our pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Vice Chair, could you read our mission statement?
The mission of the Marshall Public School District is to educate, support, and prepare all learners for success.
Thank you. We need approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Any additions? Hearing none, please vote. It is approved. Tiger Spotlight.
Eileen, we'll have you come up to the microphone up here. Eileen had a nomination this week for Tiger Spotlight. We want to recognize Cody.
Yes. As you know, my name is Eileen Blumey, and I'm very glad the Tiger Spotlight today is shining on Cody Gilland. Cody is Marshall Public Schools' main copier technician from Coordinated Business Services, and as you can see, his work schedule did not allow him to be here today. But I'll go on to say, this school district is very fortunate to have Cody, who can always be trusted to do his very best with installation, maintenance, and repair of our copying devices. It has been 5 years that he has been doing superior customer service for us. I have been operating the district-wide copy center for 41 years, and I can say with no hesitation that Cody's dedication and efforts for the copy center devices makes my work less stressful and more productive. And I think we want Cody to know that he is valued and appreciated by Marshall Public Schools, and so this spotlight will help do that. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
How'd you get him to let you take a picture to put on the board meeting? Did he know you did that?
Pardon?
Did he know you took a picture? How'd you get him to do that?
Yeah, sweet talked him.
Wouldn't look at the camera, but
Well, thank you for nominating. That's great.
He's a gentleman, and he's a valued part of our team.
That's a great job.
Thank you for
Eileen.
your,
so much.
thank you for your 41 years of service.
Public forum. Now's the time the public can approach the board and make a statement. Moving on to our presentation, the SMSU Social Science Building Update.
Kim Barse, we've asked to join us today. Kim is the project manager that we're working with on this, and he's joining us via Teams this afternoon, this evening, to share an update on where we're at and what's going on. Welcome, Kim.
Yes, good evening. So thank you. I just wanted to, getting some feedback here. Can everyone hear me?
Sounds good on our end, yeah.
Okay. So I just wanted to provide a brief project. What's happening is that when I speak, I hear it's coming back to me like every second.
We're not doing it on this end.
Okay, I'll try to work through it. So apologize. So it's just a brief project update regarding the leasing of the social science building at the SMSU campus for the Marshall Public Schools ALC program and SWC ELC program. On Wednesday, November 16th, the Mid-State Board of Trustees approved leasing of the social science building. This approval was required for the project to move forward. So with that, I wanted to just kind of give a brief look ahead in regards to kind of some overall next steps. When we look at kind of the remainder of November into December, we will be doing a cursory review, high level, with legal regarding the information that's been provided on the lease for the social science building. Along with that, we will develop a timeline for financing of the leasehold improvements. We've been working with the City of Marshall with regards to the mechanism that would be utilized, and that would be a conduit revenue bond. So we'll be working with the city and their public finance advisor on an overall timeline. And we also be working with a local financial institution that will assist in the overall process. From there, then we will kind of start to lay the groundwork for kind of the overall design process. We will start to have in-depth meetings with representatives from the Marshall Public Schools ALC program and also SWWC's ELC program. And that process will probably take us, November through probably May of 23. From there, then we would be looking at bidding and permitting, closing on the financing, and really start construction sometime mid-September. That's just a high-level overview. There'll be a lot of information that will come back to the board here with formal asks with regards to the lease and also financing of the leasehold improvements. So for today, I wanted to just provide an update because I think the milestone is that with the Mid-State Board of Trustees approving the leasing of the social science building, it really starts to lay the path for us to be able to move forward. I think maybe an ask for the board here is confirmation for us to move forward with the project based on the information provided. And I'll field any questions at this time.
No questions.
So just to confirm with the board, the idea right now is the lease has been approved at the Mid-State level to kind of start the process. And right now for tonight's ask, we're just asking the board for permission to continue to move forward with the process. There'll be lots more details and final numbers and such to come forward. But Kim, we appreciate you being here and sharing that update. And I apologize for technology issues this evening.
No problem. It cleared up, so we're good. Thank you.
Perfect.
All right, thank you. Have a good night.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Have a great evening.
Our next presentation is our 2022 audit. Welcome, Ms. Deitz. It's always a pleasure to see you.
Yeah, I've got your stack back here. All right. Well, I am Tamara Deitz. I'm a partner at Hoffman and Brobst, and I'm here to present your fiscal year 22 audit. The district received an unmodified opinion, which is a clean opinion, what we would like to see for this audit. To start out with, we'll take a look at some of the financial highlights for the district that covered fiscal year 22. As the district completed the year, its governmental funds, which are the general fund, food service fund, community service, building construction, and debt service funds. Those combined reported a decrease of approximately $5.5 million in its combined fund balance. This brought the balance at the end of the year to about $14.4 million. That decrease is primarily due to finishing construction on the new Southview Elementary School, which was partially offset by issuance of certificate of participation bonds for the construction of the Career Technical Institute. And that's also shown in that building construction fund, along with smaller variances from an increase in student and revenue related to those increase in students, a decrease in contracted service expenditures, and continued funding of free lunches for all students. The general fund, excluding transportation and operating activities, or operating capital activities, that fund balance increased about $538,000. That's up to $5.758 million. That increase was mainly due to the increase in students, along with an increase in the formula allowance for general education aid. So with an increase in students, you'll see an increase in revenue there. There was also an increase in special education aid, tuition billing, and MA billing revenue. The fund balance amounts to 17.6% of annual district expenditures, and that exceeds the district's fund balance goal of a minimum of 8% of expenditures, excluding transportation and operating capital. The district issued $4.665 million of general obligation school building refunding bonds, that's Series 2021A, in November of 2021. The proceeds of that issue were used to finance the refunding of the 2023 through 2024 maturities of the district's 21.55 million GO school building refunding bonds, Series 2012B. That refunding was undertaken to reduce the district's future debt service payments. That resulted in a present value savings of approximately $139,000. The district issued 2.1 million of certificates of participation. It's Series 2021B in November of 21 to finance the purchase of a building, remodeling and construction of classroom and office spaces for the career and technical education programs, as well as parking lot and site improvements to be constructed for this purpose. The district entered into a finance purchase lease, which was formerly called a capital lease. We'll get into that fun here in a little bit, why that changed. That agreement was for custodial equipment, and the cost of that equipment through that lease agreement was $45,000. The district also entered into a right of use lease, which was formerly an operating lease. That was for print management equipment. The cost associated with that lease was $120,000. The district once again received a significant increase in federal funding during the year, as did all districts throughout the state as a result of the grants made available through COVID-19 resources. The Department of Ed provided new sources of revenue through the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds, elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds, or commonly known as ESSER, and the Emergency Connectivity Fund program. In addition to those new sources of revenue, there was a significant increase in revenue through the federal food service program, since all students remained eligible to receive free meals through that federal food service program, regardless of family income. And that was throughout the whole year of fiscal year of 22. The district implemented GASB statement number 87 for leases, and this was the fun this year. I think every year it seems like we have new statements and standards that we have to deal with. So this was the one for this year. This requires a establishment of a lease liability and a related right of use asset for all leases with terms greater than 12 months. So what we used to consider an operating lease, we now have to book a liability and an asset, kind of like we had to do before with capital leases. The statement requires inflows and outflows, also depending on some certain areas of the leases, which we didn't have here. And then with that, the beginning net position in the statement of net position, which are the front statements, some things that the district doesn't really use to make decisions that wouldn't be on your governmental funds, but it had to be restated with a decrease of about $98,000 from implementing that statement. So this kind of goes back to when we had to implement all those pension standards as well, and that kind of restated some numbers and made things not look exactly like what the district has to deal with, but that's all on the front side of the statement. And then we just wanted to say congratulations to the district for being recognized with a Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting for fiscal year 21. Looking ahead at the district's future and what is coming up here in the next few years, the legislature approved in the 2021 legislative session a foundation formula increase of 2% for the 23 fiscal year. Along with increases for the previous few years, this will continue to have a positive effect for the school district operations and maintaining a balanced budget. So with this, if you didn't have any increase in students, you would see an increase in that revenue with those formula increases. COVID-19 related funding once again played a major factor in fiscal year 22. We're expecting to see this discontinued by the end of fiscal year 24. So we'll be seeing another shift in school funding and how schools are able to kind of get back to normal, maybe, in a sense, hopefully. The additional revenue from the CARES Act offset most of any additional expenditures we saw for personal protective equipment, transportation, and personnel. So things that were out of the normal during COVID-19. In November, the district went to the voters to reinstate an operating levy of $675 per pupil unit. That levy would have been used to stabilize the district's finances, protect student services, maintain staffing levels, and manage rising costs. If it had been approved, the referendum would have generated $1.8 million annually and would have been put into place for a period of 10 years. The district is currently operating without an operating referendum, as the previous voter approved referendum expired in fiscal year 2018. The referendum did fail with a vote of 2,186 to 2,808. The school board and district took official action in July of 17 to extend the board approved referendum of $300 and accept the $424 in local operational revenue for 5 years. That began in fiscal year 19. The district is otherwise significantly dependent on the state of Minnesota, as are all districts. So hands are tied sometimes with what can be done with revenue. The district has begun a solar panel project. The district applied for grants and has initially been approved to receive 85% of the project costs. The remaining balance of approximately $88,000 will be paid by the district using construction and capital funds. And the estimated break-even timeline on this is 2.5 years. Okay. And then this graph is showing enrollment for last year, fiscal year 21, 22, and then projecting out through fiscal year 25. The district's future projections continue to reflect steadily increasing enrollment. That positively impacts the district's funding, since enrollment is what determines most of a school district's funding components. Maintaining enrollment stability and growing it continues to be one of the district's goals. What you can't see on this graph is that there was a decrease from fiscal year 20 to 21, and that was mostly thought to be due to COVID. But student counts at that point in fiscal year 20 were at 2,530, so it has more than rebounded in fiscal year 22. And then the graphs that I'll be going over through the next few slides are showing the general fund excluding transportation and operating capital. So if you're familiar with the funds, that's Fund 1, 10, and 21. Fund balance increased from 21 to 22. That was a function of normal operations. Revenue and other financing sources exceeded your expenditures. That was mostly due to an increase in student counts, and that's that green line. And then the adjusted cash balance, which is in the red, that decreased, and that's mostly just due to timing of state revenue receipts. So there was quite a large increase in state receivables this year. So that just tends to fluctuate. Ideally, if there was no timing differences, no accruals, they'd be the same, but we have some timing differences every once in a while that are larger. These two graphs show your general fund revenue by source. Fiscal year 22 is at the top and 21 is down at the bottom. You can see that the largest source of revenue is going to be in the gray, and that's your revenue from the state. That's consistent with all other districts. Federal sources of revenue are one of the smallest pieces of the pie, so it's that brown one there. So you can see this year 9% of the revenue caused the most compliance requirements. So your federal revenue and expenditures match up. If they are over $750,000, a single audit is required. The district has had a single audit in the past. You guys have crossed that threshold for quite a while. But with COVID-19, we have a lot more federal funding sources, so there's been different programs that have had to be tested through the single audit. And then, yeah, just pointing out federal revenue, 7% last year, 9% of revenues this year. You had quite a large increase in that funding.
Is that because of COVID funding?
Yes. Yep, so then this graph is going to show a 5-year history of your revenues by source. Again, you can see state funding, which is the green line, the largest line there. That's your largest source of revenue. The increasing amounts over the year primarily due to an increase in your basic formula along with increasing students. Fiscal year 21, you can see that went down. We had that drop in student counts there. And then in let's see here. Here. Yeah, and then the brown line as your federal revenue. So that's the one on the left. And that's just going, brown one. You can see it increasing with increase in COVID funding there as well. And then the next slide. This is going to show your revenue or your expenditures by object. Again, 22 at the top, 21 at the bottom. The largest expenditure to any school district should be salaries and benefits, so the red and the yellow boxes there. A district's job is to educate students. You need the manpower to do it. As you can see, expenditure categories in the general fund have remained similar between the 2 years. So not much fluctuation as far as percentages go. Nothing out of the normal. The next graph shows a 5-year history of expenditures by object. The expenditures have remained consistent, and you can see each year the 2 biggest expenditures are wages in the orange and benefits in the yellow. The increase in fiscal year 20 to site buildings and equipment, which is the greenish color that you can see there, that was the safety grant projects at the middle school and west side, and then repair to the high school gym for the fire and water damage. In 2022, other expenditures, which is the brown one, the very right bar there, increased with the implementation of GASB 87. So with the implementation with GASB 87, we now show any lease payments, we break it out into principal and interest, so that gets coded into like the other expenditures on this graph. So that's the main change there. Okay, and if we look at areas or programs in which most expenditures are attributable, the graph here will depict that. Each program or category is at the bottom, and then the colors represent the last 5 years. So you can see here, regular instruction and exceptional instruction are and have been the majority of the district's expenditures. Again, I would expect to see this with the purpose of a school district. The increase in fiscal year 2020 for site buildings and equipment, that's going to be the safety grants again. And then an increase in fiscal and other fixed cost programs in 22 is the implementation of GASB 87. So just a little bit different on the categories between the 2 graphs. And that will conclude the general fund. And then as we look at our other funds throughout the district, your food service fund revenue for fiscal year 22 totaled about $2.38 million, and expenditures were at $2,097,000. That resulted in the fund balance increase of about $284,000. We're seeing this across the board, large increases in food service fund balance. And that is mainly due to receiving quite a bit more in food service revenue with the free meals for all students. At the end of the year, food service fund balance is at roughly $871,000. In fiscal year 22, total revenues for the community service fund were $2.7 million, and total expenditures were at $2.67 million. So total revenues exceeded expenditures by about $56,000. That resulted in an increase in the fund balance of the same amount. At the end of the year, the fund balance here is at about $873,000. That increase was due mainly to positive operations in adult basic education and early childhood family education programs. The building construction fund had expenditures that exceeded your revenue and other financing sources by $6.899 million. That is mainly due to finishing your construction on your new school and partially offset by the issuance of certificates of participation. The fund balance at the end of the year in the building construction fund is at $3,023,000. The debt service fund revenues and other financing sources exceeded expenditures and other financing uses by 441,000. That increase is mainly due to statutory levy requirements and funding of an escrow account, which is mandated. The fund balance in the debt service fund at the end of the year is $2,125,000. The OPEB revocable trust service fund, this had a net loss of $131,000 on investments and investment expense. It paid the general fund about $69,000 for employee benefits, which are other post-employment benefits that the district offers. The net position for this fund at the end of the year is $739,000. That is a quick and dirty overview of all the funds. And I just wanted to say thank you to Dion, Leanna, the board, all of the finance and HR people that we get to bug as we go through our audit. So they make our job a lot easier. They get us information when we need it and helps us move along. So any questions? Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So with the results of the audit compared to the budget, Jeremy and I just thought it'd be a good time we met with the finance committee, and we thought it'd be a good time to meet with the whole board to try and just be transparent of what the difference between the budget and the audit results were. It's definitely a celebration to come out in an excess rather than the deficit. Timeline, and Jeremy and I have been updating the budget process. But as you guys know, we do the revised budget in December, try to get that done so we can get the preliminary budget for the next year done in January, February. So the budget numbers that compared to the audit is about 6 months lagging with a lot of things that happen. But so we just wanted to go through, and I won't go through a lot of the things with the different fund balances because I think everybody's been on the board long enough to know those, and we talk about those both during the budget and the truth and taxation. So general fund, as Tamara had shown, we showed a $537,865 excess. Our revised budget was projected to be a $262 deficit, so you can see the difference there. I'll talk a little bit about percentages because when you are working with, and this is just the general fund, $32 million, it doesn't take much to move that needle. Our expenditures were off about 0.58% from budget to audited, and then the revenue was off about 1.73. So to cover the expenditure differences, didn't want to go through every single line item with you guys as much as that would have been exciting. We just wanted to break down the big differences to kind of show you where did that $190,000 difference come from. The top line, I just honestly wanted to share with you, out of $21 million, $21,385,000, we're off 0.08% on salaries, which obviously that's a huge part of our budget. And you may say, well, your salaries are set. We have, I think, over 150 hourly people. So hours vary. We could do without pays, maternity leaves, those type of things. So salaries do fluctuate. It's not just a flat number. So we work hard to get that one as close as possible. When it came to benefits, the main thing that was off was our health benefits. It was off about $79,000. This is due, and Tamara had touched on this. Hildy, our actuary company, every year goes through and they tell us what we can transfer from our OPEB fund to the general fund, which this year was $69,000. We budget that amount in the health insurance. And so next year I'll probably, each year it's been right around that 60,000. I'll lessen the budget $60,000 because we know that some funds will get transferred. So that explained about 69,000 of that 79,000. The other 10,000, one person signs up, one person doesn't sign up. You're talking $5,000 to $14,000 in premiums. Severance, we budgeted $81,000. We ended up spending 30. That's a big unknown. We try to look at things. One thing is the last 2 years have averaged about 73,000. We've recently added some severance clauses to like our hourly support staff and custodians. So we thought that number actually would move up, but a lot of the people that are leaving didn't qualify for severance. So that number, we actually saved about $50,000, so that's good. Legal fees, we budgeted 60,000. Over the last 2 years, we spent about 61. That's a number, again, you never know. So we budgeted the 60,000 to be safe, and we only spent 15,000. Again, another win, but definitely moved the needle. And then supplies, that was another, call it a bragging moment or whatever, that we were only off around 5,000 out of a $788,000 budget. So we do our best, but it kind of explains where that $190,000 came from. Revenue, that one was quite a bit off in our favor, which is good. It was off about $563,000 from the budgeted number. Our tuition billing and some of these things Tamara touched on in the audit, our tuition billing was up about $63,000 from last year. Tuition billing is mostly it's the agreement we have with Linden Milroy, and their tuition or their enrollment was up about 12 kids, which resulted in that 63,000. Something that we really can't really know in advance. And again, we took the average of the prior years and it ended up higher, which is great. MA billing went from 120,000 budgeted to 176 real that we actually received. There again, we took the last couple of years, which was 116,000, and we upped it a little bit. Had a nice conversation with Nancy Grams about the reason for that. Basically, we had a COVID rebound, and we had additional expenses that we were able to claim. So that resulted in about $56,000 more than what we had budgeted. General fund was close to $100,000 off of what was budgeted. We had our increased enrollment budget numbers, and as you guys know, that's about 13 kids to sway that number that much. Insurance, that one, I really don't budget a lot for insurance recovery, hoping that we don't have a large number there. We ended up having one of our deductibles was 10,000, so that was the big difference there. Federal special ed, there is a number that it's kind of like our title, whatever we spend, as long as we have the revenue, it's a zero number between the expenditures and revenue. The last couple of years, we've spent about $342,000. We try to carry over probably about 10% into the next year. I think we've been carrying over a little more than 10%, so we actually were able to spend a little more towards federal. What that is so for state special ed, we're only allowed to do salaries, not benefits. Federal special ed, we're able to do benefits. So we're able to take our paras and special ed teachers, take their benefits, and use federal funds to get reimbursed for that. We ended up spending a little more because our federal funds were up. So it offset our expenditures. It was a zero move. But it ended up to be about $46,000 more in revenue. The big number, the state special ed, I just shake my head because I talked to a couple other districts and talked to one of the districts, which is kind of my mentor, and they were off about $270,000, which is great, right? I mean, it's those are good funds to have. Our prior 2 years was around $3.5 million. The revenue projection model that MDE provides projected, and this is including all funds, included about $4 million. I had budgeted 1.4, so I actually budgeted higher with the revenue projection, and overall it ended up about 4.2. So even though I upped the number from the revenue projection, it still ended up higher. because of our expenses. Do want to point out, because it's very important, that this isn't skewed. We still exceed our special ed expenditures about $1.8 million from revenue. So that 160 or $182,000 is great, but nowhere near does that cover our special ed expenditures.
That comes out of general fund.
Correct.
And these are, these are dedicated funds. We can't move special ed into general fund if we have a plus.
Correct. Well, there's nothing to move. Our CTE, our levy for the CTE portion, we had an adjustment that came through on the levy for $44,000 that wasn't budgeted. And then that last line, Tamara had mentioned, some of our state receivables were up compared to previous years from budgeted numbers. So general fund, actually there's one more slide I think I had put. Yeah, this shows just the general special ed, what I had projected, or what the projection came in, what the budget came in, and what the actual came in. So we'll try to do our best to get it closer, but I obviously don't want to go where all of a sudden we budget more than what we receive either. Next slide, please.
Is there a year delay in our special ed funding?
There's an overlap. There is a delay on it, yes. That's one thing that we try to wait till the end of October because we're still receiving funds for the previous year.
This year.
So the auditors, we try to wait as long as we can, but still meet the deadline. So general fund, any questions? That was the biggest turn. Again, it's a good thing, but just want to be transparent.
I'm glad that you were conservative because this would be a really bad meeting if it was flipped the other way.
Yes. Yep.
It was always good to be a little conservative like that. So.
Yep. And still want to point out, because with us going out for the operating referendum, we still spent $2 million of COVID funds that next year we have some funds available, but those will run out. So if you do the math, we're still in the hole off of those two numbers. Tamara had touched on a little bit also, our expenditures were up 3%, which is normal actually with some of the food costs. That turned out a little better. But our revenue, as Tamara said, with all schools, it was great having the free meals. The revenue on the free meals was up from our regular. So we ended up with about $2.5 million or $250,000 more than what we had budgeted. I think this is a blessing in disguise because we, and it's in the expense report, we had two stoves go out at Parkside, 30-year-old stoves. They're $10,000 each. We've got a lot of equipment that we need to replace. The high school is 16, 17 years old. The dishwasher alone is around $90,000. So that $254,000 can get sucked up like that. So we'll do some evaluating on our equipment. The other nice thing is with a fund balance like that, we'll talk to the board, present to the board. But as for increases to our meals, we probably don't have to look at that next year, which is a good thing. Next. Transportation, won't spend a lot of time on that, came out very well. We had some less expenditures in bus riders, and our contracted services actually went down because the year before we had those two routes, that route added because of COVID. So we're only off about $33,000 on that. Community services, take ABE out of the equation and we were right on. We're about, and Tamara touched on this, we're about $119,000 off in expenditures, and I believe we were off almost the same in our revenue, both because of the ABE programming. So we'll work on trying to get that a little better as we look into our crystal ball of how the year is going to look like. Capital, this one again, I won't spend a ton of time on because as you guys know, with our long-term facility maintenance, a lot of ours is done in the summer. We plan on getting it done in June. It ended up going in July. It's a different year. Or we ended up planning something in July and we shift it to June because we have time, and it ends up in the previous year. So that one there, honestly, I feel like we're on track with our LTFM budget revenue. We do our 10-year. We show that to you guys. I think if anything was off a lot, if it was capital, then we'd have to have a conversation. But when it comes to LTFM, good example is our carpet. We were going to get that done prior to July 1st. Carpet didn't show up till the last week of June, so it ended up going into next year, into this current fiscal year. So, and then the last one, wanted to just point out, because we'll look at this at the Truth in Taxation also. We did we redid the bonds in 2021 to do that savings. I think it was $130,000. We hadn't budgeted that at the beginning of the year because we didn't know if we were going to do that or not. And so basically it looks like it's doubled, but the end result is good. But that's why the budget's way off there. So any questions, Jeremy? Did I miss anything that we had talked about?
Thank you.
Thanks, Dion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dion.
Moving on to our consent agenda, motion to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions? Please vote. It's approved. Financials, motion to approve the financials. Do I have a second?
Second.
Open for discussion.
As previous, I emailed Bill and the treasurer in advance, just, I don't know, probably about 20 items off of the expenditures, just with explanations of what they were, just to highlight or explain a couple to the full board. Reminder that we do we're part of the AB consortium that consists of, it's ISD 518, which is Wabasso, or not Wabasso, I'm sorry, Worthington, Minnesota River Valley, and then Blue Earth joined this year, so you'll see their name on there. They're pretty large amounts, so just wanted to point that out. That's a quarterly disbursement. The C&T Design and Equipment, those were the two ovens at Parkside for $22,000. We had about $3,800 to D&G. That was to clean up the CTE warehouse. That's going to be covered by insurance. Then we had a payment to the City of Marshall for $42,257. That is the funding for community services comes through the school district, so that's the payment to the city for running the community service program.
Any questions? Hearing none, please vote. It is approved. Anything else on financials?
No, sir.
Board forum, board members? Anybody have anything to bring up?
We had a conversation in Finance Committee, and I'll probably talk a little bit more about it later. But we had a conversation about offering an early retirement opportunity with our principals group. This was something that I think was actually brought to the board during negotiations earlier in the year, with the referendum having failed. The board obviously looking for an opportunity to find potential cost savings. That was one of the reasons that we have decided to maybe go back and offer this proposal for a voluntary voluntary early retirement for the Principals Association, really to anyone who would be 55 and up, effective no later than August 1st of 2023, and asking anyone who would be interested to notify the district by January 1st of 23. I'll probably go into a little bit more later when we are looking at taking action on it, but that was a conversation from our finance committee meeting last week.
Very good. Anybody else? Administrators report.
Right. I'm going to give you a little bit of an abbreviated version this evening because we have a lot of things on the agenda today. I do want to talk a little bit about just the operating referendum. The outcome of that vote certainly was not what we were looking for. Brings us back to the drawing board, looking at some alternative solutions. So the conversation tonight about the audit, certainly good to end up in a better position than we had anticipated. Gives us a little time to rethink the plan and what goes next. Reality is still that we've been using COVID funds to cover significant budget shortfalls over the past couple of years, and those COVID funds are about to be gone. Been very intentional with how we've used those in the past, and we just need to think about what happens next. That operating referendum, like Tamara and Deanne talked about, that would have been an increase in revenue, but that was a year out that would have happened. So anything that happens is just pushed back. Following that election and our canvassing last week, Deanne and I did meet with Jody and Shelby from Ellers. We talked about just where we're at financially as a district and what this all means going forward. We talked about a number of considerations, some options to look at. If we do choose to run another operating referendum, those can only be done during general election. So that would have to be next November at the earliest that we could do that. There are some other options of funding types that we can look at or consider. So we need to think about that. The other thing that we've talked about is we had some conversation about doing a community survey and just get some feedback some more feedback from the community about what would have been supported and what that might look like going forward to help us give us some ideas of what maybe our next steps would look like. So we talked about that at finance. We also discussed that just a little bit. So we have some more numbers to put together, some work to do around it, but I wanted to share that update with the board that's kind of where we're at right now with that conversation. With the other sites, I'm just going to give you a brief summary of kind of all the reports that were together with those. Early childhood and then most all other sites talked about conferences. We've had conference nights recently. Our elementary sites had 3 nights over just the past couple of weeks. So a lot of opportunity there for feedback with parents and staff, and some good conversations took place there. And they almost all buildings mentioned that in the board reports this time. Also, the sites talked about their Veterans Day programs. Veterans Day was on November 11th. There are a lot of different things taking place with that. Turkey Bingo took place recently with early childhood. That's always a fun activity. I think that was last Friday night actually at Parkside, and they had a good turnout and a fun event there. Parkside, one of the big things that Darcy calls out in hers is a big thing every year, but I think it's really important work that takes place as we talk about closing that learning gap and meeting individual student needs. She talks in her report specifically about the data meetings they do. They've built in the schedule time for every classroom teacher to work with the instructional coach and talk about student progress for all students in the room, looking at specific concerns, needs, and determining next steps to meet those individual needs. So that's a really important piece that's happening at Parkside, and it happens at Southview as well, but Darcy called it out in her report. That's really good work taking place. Southview talked about Veterans Day program as well. First Sergeant Ryan Brunsfeld, Marshall grad, was there and talked about his experiences with the kids. Pete also talks in his report about just a lot of fun things with their PBIS program that are taking place. They had Brad Bigler with a basketball team from the college there, played basketball with the kids, did some activities with them, and then they actually were around for the day and did some activities with Phi Ed classes during the day. So it was a fun opportunity for the kids at that level. Middle school calls out their MIC Teacher of the Month. They've had a couple people recognized. Taylor Johnson was recognized recently as MIC Teacher of the Month, and I just saw today, it wasn't in the board report, but Ethan Hoppy was recognized today as the next MIC Teacher of the Month. So some recognition is taking place in the middle school that they're pretty excited about, and so certainly well-deserved with those teachers. High school, Brian has a lot of things in his report to go through too. AFS, the American Field Service, it's a program that we've partnered with through the high school for foreign exchange students. They were recently recognized Marshall High School just for that level of participation and the number of students that go through there, so that was exciting for them. The other thing I want to make sure we talk about, it was a year ago we talked about a high school graduate, I guess I'll say. So his name is Mr. Richard Rossett. He attended Marshall High School in the years of 1961 to 1964. He dropped out of high school in September of his senior year to join the United States Navy. When he was in the Navy, he earned his GED and he went on to get a college diploma, but he never had that actual high school diploma. His family and he had reached out to us a while back. We looked at his college transcript. We looked at our policy, Credit for Learning, and we determined that we were going to offer him a high school diploma. So he sent us a picture. We got a picture of him in his military uniform, just got up on the screen, with the high school diploma that we recently issued him. That was just an exciting thing that happened. It was nice to be able to recognize him for his achievements, and just certainly thank him for his service to our country. And to have this come back around Veterans Day time was kind of fun. So I want to make sure we call that out. The other thing that took place at high school recently that we wanted to mention, on November 15th, the high school they welcomed author and Holocaust survivor Fred Amram to the high school. He spoke to the student body, did 2 presentations, so the entire student body was able to participate. Really an incredible opportunity for our students, looking at the lessons from the Holocaust from one of the few survivors left in the world. So it was a nice opportunity for our kids. I know a lot of board members were able to attend that as well.
That was a dramatic presentation.
Yep, very powerful. I'm glad we had that opportunity. Honor Society was a big part of that at the high school. Finally, with the buildings, I want to call out, Maytech is going to be joining the high school on December 5th. We have a presentation by Tony Hoffman coming to the high school. Our nurses and counselors completed a grant to bring him in. He'll be a guest speaker for the students. Tony was homeless. He was in prison at one point, and he turned his life around. He made it to the Olympics, and he was a BMX bike racing coach, and now he's a motivational speaker being with high school kids. So I'm pretty excited to have that out. I know an email went out to high school families today with a little update about what that is and what's going to happen there. But that will be on December 5th. They'll all get to participate in that. Activities always has a lot of exciting things. I think we can't ignore some of those at this table. I want to just mention a couple things that we don't always get the recognition. Because certainly our volleyball team winning state championship, that's exciting. And the cross country, there's some exciting things taking place there. But there's some things also taking place that don't get as much spotlight. We want to make sure we call out. Nikki Bell has been swim coach in the district for a number of years. Nikki has done a great job with that. She has announced this is her last season as swim coach for us. And we just want to thank her for all of her work with our kids on the swim team. A number of people recognized recently. Chidi Wakama was recognized as a district player of the year for football. Terry Ballman was named football coach of the year for the district. Not our district, but the district, bigger district. Leah Jones, Caitlin Christensen, Lauren Weary, and Randy Wendorf were named to an all-tournament volleyball team. And exciting thing for Robbie Goodman. A lot of you know Robbie. She's been part of our district for a number of years. Her and husband Doug have been big supporters of martial athletics. Robbie officiated the 4A volleyball championship match. That's a huge achievement for her. So it's fun to see her have that opportunity to do that. The activities department wanted to call out a thank you to her for all of her years of service to the district. It was pretty exciting, and to get to see Robbie get to do that. One other thing I want to call out is with the Director of Teaching and Learning, Beth had in her report, we have hosted a career and technical summit for the past couple of years. The district has done talking about our CTI center and trying to build kind of what that looks like and how we can partner with businesses with that. We are hosting our 3rd annual CTE summit on December 2nd, so a week from now. We're calling it, What Does CTE Mean for Me? And we're going to talk specifically about partnerships with businesses and what that means, what that looks like in the classrooms, and specifically for students and job shadows and on work experiences and such for all of our kids. There's so many things taking place. We want to make sure we connect with businesses, and we're going to a broader field. In the past, we've looked at specifically with automotive, welding, or the manufacturing, and the medical pieces that we're teaching right now. We want to think bigger for this one, so we're inviting a broader scope. We're hosting that at SMSU in the lower ballroom conference center, and looking at bringing in a guest speaker to talk about CTE and the impact that has on students and their education and preparing them for future success. So really excited about that coming up on December 2nd. Be a good event. And the chamber, the Service Cooperative, and Private Industry Council, we're all co-hosting this event together. So it's not just us doing this. We're working with local partners on hosting this event and getting invitations out to multiple businesses. Dion, Business Services.
Just touch on a few things. Wanted to point out our P-card rebate. We do that every year. Just thank you to Carla, because she really pushes using our P-card, which we get a rebate back on it. It's a little over $15,000 a year, so that's big. We started our United Way campaign last week. We had a pretty good first week. I think we ended up about 26% of our goal. So that's cool. Irrigation system savings, Preston emails this out each year. So pretty impressive numbers. We save about $32,000 using that pump in the pond. And then he included the total number of gallons that have been used from the station over the past 5 years and what the potential savings has been. to the city and to the district, about 335,000. So good partnership there. We had our safety IEQ meeting, not to be confused with crisis, but we talked more about safety, first aid, our workman's comp, winter safety. And then visited with Southwest Coaches. They're obviously looking for drivers, and I think some of our, some of our activities got a little adjusted because of the shortage of drivers. Our routes get done about 3:30. Sometimes the teams have to leave at 2:20, but if we don't have a driver, we have to finish our route. So we threw this out here because we had a few parents say, well, I'll drive. We encourage them to sign up and look into it. It is a process, though. We can't, or Southwest Coaches has to follow the rules by the state and going through all the processes. So we just laid that out there so people could see. The city is still working on the lights and the speed limit signs. I think they're getting closer. Some are working in different areas. We do plan to collaborate with them on, and I put one of the flyers out there to get that out on Facebook, as well as to, for sure, Southview and the middle school. And then Alex is putting a video piece together, which will be great to be able to share with the community on how to run those. And then I just wanted to share, we did hire with Jeffrey Martin moving to the high school in between days and nights. It was an opening. We had an opening, and instead of hiring the flex custodian position, we hired Rodney, who has put his background there. Good background. We feel like he'll be a good step in a maintenance, but he'll also be helping out with filling in if we're short on a custodian. We feel like there's a possibility of maybe 1 or 2 retirements in the next year or two, and maintenance in 5 or 4 buildings isn't something you can just step into day one. So to be able to have the training with our 2 maintenance guys and Warren, we feel will be big. Again, it's not an additional position. We just switched from the flex position to maintenance. And then just a reminder of the truth in taxation. And then Jeremy and I wanted to make sure we gave the board updates on facilities, some of the projects. We try to communicate what's going on with all of them. Some of them you probably think are done, but we're still working on some things. The CTI Center, they did start demolition on that. As of last week, we were 10th in line with the state. Last time we talked to ICS, they were actually in reviewing some of ours. So we're getting close. Until we get that, our contractors know what they can do and can't do up until that approval, so they'll try to get as much work as they can done. We're currently working with a local TSP architect and engineering firm to rebuild the warehouse, which we have to do in order for that to go to state for approval. We have not gone any further. We want to make sure the insurance company is going to cover that cost prior to taking that next step, which I can't see why they wouldn't, but we'll wait to get the insurance company's approval on that. The solar project, Warren and I had a meeting today with Solar Connections. The 4 of them, besides the CTI Center, are up and running, so we're actually containing energy and savings with those. We're going to get more information on that. They showed us some programs that we can log into and actually see what kind of energy we're getting in, and we can put those to dollars compared to previous years. And then we'll be working with Jeremy and Beth on trying to figure out some kind of curriculum to implement with that, whether it's on Earth Day or something. So that project has gone very well. And then the IAQ project, we still have a few punch list items. There's a few things that we're still working on with BISBES and ICS. We do have, as part of the project we did prior to this project, let's say 2016, when we had the QZAB bonds, with adding the gym and the locker rooms and the pool area, we're probably going to have to add some extra pumps to make sure that everything is working appropriately and heating properly. So we're working with Bisbee's on that, where we need to get those booster pumps put in. Middle school gym, part of the IEQ project was the acoustic panels. We're working with a company. We did get a couple of bids. We got a bid that actually turned out quite a bit better than our first bid, so we were happy about that. We're hoping, she said she could pencil us in over Christmas break, which would be awesome. Otherwise, we'll probably have to wait till summer. But that'll be huge for the gym. That gym area is coming together. And then Southview construction project. Still have 12 punch list warranty items that we are working very hard to, with the contractors to get resolved. We've gotten bids on 6 of the items to ask them to give us a credit. We still have retainage, plenty of retainage left over. 6 of the items we got bids on, and we just want our local contractors to finish those 6 out of the 12. The other 6 items we feel like they need to resolve. And then the items that we do take on, we will have in the letter that nothing affects warranty on the project. So high school project, carpet project, we're going to kick that off over Christmas break. Mike DeVos will be, I think it's 4 rooms. We have some carpet left over from the middle school project because we didn't end up doing the library area this year. Eventually it'll get done. But there's some high school rooms that need it done a little more. So that's exciting that we'll be able to get. We're going to use the same carpet, which is good, so we can have stock and not have to have 2 or 3 different things. And then lastly, the gymnastics area, pretty exciting. The community services a couple weeks ago started their Saturday youth program. Cam Bailey reported back very positive comments from the parents. And then on a week ago, our gymnastics actually started practice down there. So that's pretty cool to see that area being used for all of that. So
Yeah, if I just want to, back up Dion here a little bit, this Southview construction, I want to go on record saying how disappointed we are with ICS. They've been very good through the majority of this project, but they just refused to bring this to closure. We're almost 2 years in on this project, and they're not getting these things wrapped up. So I just want to go on record saying how disappointed we are with them and not fulfilling their obligations as our representative to kind of bring that project to completion. So if people have the opportunity to speak with them in various settings, I think we should let them know our disappointment.
Do they have a letter of disappointment? Can we send them a letter of disappointment?
I think he's already done that
an email
several times.
almost
But I
every
mean,
day.
that way,
I agree, Bill. It shouldn't land on Dion's desk. Shouldn't land on Dion's desk to have to do that follow-up.
because if they can't finish the project, well then we need to put that out there for other school districts that be wary of this company if they don't finish what they're supposed to do.
Like I
Otherwise,
said, they were very good.
to
They
start
were
with,
very
yes.
good to get us
Throughout the
almost
whole
to
thing.
completion, but here we are at the finish line and we want to cross it.
We could tell them we can put out a letter of disgust in the public for them, or send it to all the other school districts in the Free State area.
Jeremy, question with the high school gymnastics here at the middle school. Are we providing transportation for the freshman or sophomore over here?
I
Or
don't believe we are, no.
we aren't? Okay.
We didn't provide it when it went to
They're
Parkside.
catching
so-
rides.
Yeah. We've got a bus that runs kids from the middle school to the high school for practice at the end of the day.
Okay.
All right, very good, thank you. Moving on to our first reading of policies 413 through
Just one policy.
1 policy 413-09.
Yep.
Any questions?
I want to share with this one. This is related to having the availability of Narcan in the classroom. So we know that we've seen a lot more in the news and a lot more going on with opioid-related overdoses. Certainly can happen in schools. We've been working with the school nurses, and they've been in contact with Steve Remler's Hope Network. This is something that's available to school districts to be trained and have things available. We don't have a policy right now that covers this availability for other classrooms. We feel like it would be certainly beneficial to have this. So this is the first of 3 readings on this policy to have some conversation on it. The nurses are wanting to do some training and have this available. My understanding is that the Narcan, when available, could certainly save a life when it's needed. And if they were to administer it to, to somebody where they weren't necessarily using drugs, if I gave it to one of you right now, it wouldn't have any impact on you. It'd be safe, and it just seems like a good idea, just in case we were to need it, to have that available. So we're asking
Yeah.
for that policy to be approved.
So they would keep that in a nurse's office or?
That's what we're
office?
looking at, yep.
This is a really good policy. I like seeing this. I think what it really does, though, is it underscores the challenges that our students are facing today. Whether it be a drug issue or a mental health issue, I think a lot of times those run hand in hand if you do research on those things. And I just want, I guess, our public to know how important things like this are, but two, to understand the challenges that our students are facing every day. And this one is just one of those that just pops out to me. So thank you.
Discussion item number 2 is second review of policy 714. This goes with fund balances. Any questions? Enrollment update.
Just wanted to share enrollment update with the board. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but the attachment is linked there. You can see that our October 1st numbers, those are certainly our big numbers we use for the year. That's the one that we kind of compare back to throughout the entire year. We were showing up students from last spring, where we ended the year last year. November is holding fairly steady with that. You see there's a decrease, it looks like, at early childhood numbers. Right now, we do keep some seats in early childhood. We're required to keep some seats for students qualify for special ed and such. So we know there's always some referrals coming in. We have to have some seats available for anyone that might come in there. But we're seeing a lot of increase at the high school, but overall holding steady from October.
How is the room holding up at high school?
They're tight at the high school right now, but
And under action items, the first action item is approval to move forward with the lease and leasehold improvements. Need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion?
like we mentioned earlier with presentation from Kim, this is just approval to keep having those conversations, and we start breaking into specifics with financing and the specifics with the lease and that sort of thing, so.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, please vote. It is approved. Approval of the 2021-22 audit, motion to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion? Congratulations to your team on that good audit report.
It's an awesome team.
Be sure you tell them. Call for vote. It is approved. Approval to offer early retirement incentive to the Marshall Principal Association.
So moved.
Open for discussion.
Mentioned earlier when Aaron shared a report from the Finance Committee. This is something this group has approached us and asked about. We feel like there'd be a cost savings to the district. We've run the numbers. There would be a cost savings to the district. Putting it out that we wanted to offer it to the principals group. The offer would be, they'd have to let us know by January 1st if they intend to resign, submit the resignation. That would be effective no later than August 1st. So we'd have somebody in place for the new school year.
There are only two people who would qualify, and only one is applying, am I correct?
We haven't sent it to them yet, so I'm not sure how many would apply. Yep.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. It is approved. Thank you, board members. Meeting is adjourned.